screen. So I will again
Okay.
share my screen.
Sure, Prakhar.
So what happened is like, as I was telling that the malware was running, but it is running inside the notepad.exe. So normal analysts will think that, okay, it's a notepad.exe and it is like totally signed by Microsoft. It is not malicious, but it can be malicious. It might be like, what will happen is like, there are 10 techniques actually by which a process
Okay.
injection can happen. And most of the like the popular techniques are actually written over here. So the first technique, if you
Mm-hmm.
see that there's a malware process, okay, what it does is like it has a malicious based DLL. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what it does is, it suppose this target process is notepad.exe. So what we'll do is like it will inject the malicious DLL inside this notepad.exe. Okay, using some kind of functions and all, and this
Okay.
notepad will be running that malicious DLL file. Okay, and it will be like,
Mm-hmm.
it will be turning to a malware. Okay, so this is something that what happens normally, like nowadays what happen, like almost 80% of the time you will be like seeing process injection happen by any malware. Okay, now there are certain thing like you can see portable. So again, like what is happening, you can see quickly that, okay, the malware is actually injecting some data inside some other process. And one of the easy technique I will just show you, which is actually process following. Okay, so what happened in this is like, suppose the malware wants to hide itself but inside behind notepad.exe. So what it will do is like, it will start the notepad.exe itself, but it will start that in a suspended state. Okay, so what happened
Okay.
in suspended state is that the data of the executable code of that notepad.exe will be loaded to the RAM memory, but it won't be running. It is suspended state. And then once it's loaded, like all the boundary and all are made by the notepad for any operating system to run it properly, the malware actually remove the codes from that process, from the suspended process, and inject the malicious code, and then it will terminate itself. And then it will start this process and terminate itself and delete itself. So what will happen? The process will be like kind of having all the things very quite kind of like what you say. Every path of that process will be like kind of correct. Everything will be correct, but the process will be kind of running the malicious code inside it, and it's like very difficult to kind of get if that process is kind of infected or not. So one of the like most important stuff that we do normally is using the malfind plugin, okay, to see if any process is like kind of a code injected. And this is one of the things that I will tell. So the command is same. You just write volatility.exe, give -f the file name of that RAM image, give the profile, and then you just type malfind. You don't need to type these things for now. Okay, you just
So,
type malfind.
Pragyan, after profile, what is that Win XPS?
Yeah, so
Is
this
it?
is okay. So what happened? This image was actually taken from a system which was running Windows XP Service Pack
Uh-huh.
2, and the CPU was 32-bit. Okay, so
Okay.
I
Okay.
can tell you Windows XP SP2 x86.
How to find out this information,
Okay,
Pragyan? Like,
so suppose you have your system with you right now. One of the things you can do is like, you can just go to start and type dxdiag command. Okay, so I'll
uh
just type that thing, dxdiag command. And if you open that, it will tell you that it is Windows 7. It will tell you the operating system information like Windows 7, what is the service pack, and if it is 64-bit or 32-bit.
Yeah, because we can get, operating system and whether it is 64-bit or 32-bit, but I'm not sure in which service pack.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why you're
Yeah.
used to
Yeah, service pack
note.
is correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, both the other things are very easy, as you're telling. Yeah, service pack 2 is something like either you can take it from the DX diag, and service pack is also like kind of very easy to kind of check. You can just type, maybe if you're not knowing service pack, but you're knowing that it's x86 architecture and Windows 7. So you can just maybe try 2 or 3 times Windows X7 SP1 x86, Windows 7 SP2 x86, and like 1 or 3 service packs will be there, like most of the time 1 to 4. And you can like get to know, okay, what will be the, if you are not knowing that easily, you can again like kind of just brute force 1 to 4, and you can get like, okay, what maybe the service pack of that thing. Got it?
Got it, Pragyan.
Yeah. So I'm just, if I run this malfind plugin, so what it will, so what it is showing is that it will actually give you a lot of process which are having maybe the code injection. Okay, and how this plugin actually tells you that and that maybe one. So what it does is like it actually scans the RAM memory every page, like 4 KB of page, and see if that page permission is like page execute and read write. So this is the most important thing how Malfind works. It checks for the pages in the RAM. So pages is something which we have like kind of seen in operating system. It's like kind of the smallest slot of in RAM memory, maybe of 4 KB. And if you make all the combine all the pages, you will get the full memory image, right? So this is something like slot. It checks all the slots, all the pages, and see if the permission of that page is like page execute, read, write. So most of the time, what will you will see that page only has two things: page read and write, but it won't have the permission of execute.
Execute.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
when but when like malware, like Malfind you run, it checks all the pages and it will see if it has any of the pages with execute permission. And what happens like when you are doing that, maybe suppose you get like 10 process with 10 pages with like page execute, read, write. And what happened like it's not that okay 10 pages if you see with page execute it's malicious. Most of the time normal process also makes some pages executable. It's not just the malicious process. Okay,
Mhm.
but what happened like suppose in this diagram you can see that it actually had, so it's a snip, there's a huge output, it's just a snip of one of the process, and you can see that services.exe that is running with PID 668 has one page that is with set with permission page execute. And when I saw that page I see something interesting. The starting bit is 4D5A, and 4D5A actually start in ASCII is MZ, and it is actually the starting signature of an executable. So here, with a 90 to 95% accuracy, we can tell that the services.exe has been code injected by a malware just by seeing this kind of this signature over there, right? Okay. So one of the
Okay.
yeah yeah
Again, so what are the signatures like which are a bit similar to this signature,
yeah
uh, where we can find that information? Because you were saying, I mean, what signature it is, if it is starting with 4D5A.
yeah. So
Uh,
what happened? Yeah, what happened? Like when suppose you have like any executable, okay, not pad.exe or anything. So for any executable, if you see the starting binary, okay, starting binary. So this is in hex format. Okay, if you see the
okay,
starting,
okay,
so if you convert that into hex, it will always turn out to be 4D5A. Okay, and 4D5
mm-hmm.
in ASCII it is MZ. It is called magic signature. Okay, so it's just a kind of a terminology. But what happened like suppose you have a file which doesn't have an extension, but you want to know what it is. So so suppose I send you an image file with a name test dot something test, no extension like .jpg or .png, and you want to know that is that a executable or a memory or an image file or a doc file or a ppt file. What you do is just kind of load that in a hexadecimal viewer and see the first bytes of that. So what will happen is like suppose I have sent you a jpg file, so the signature will be different, it will be something different, I'm not able to recall, but it will be totally different. Okay, and that signature will be same for any kind of jpg file existing all over the world. Okay, similarly for executable the signature will be always same, it is 4D5A. Okay, so by that we can totally confirm that services.exe has been injected with a malware. And now what you can do is like you can either dump this portion out from the memory and do start the analysis what you are like normally do the static and the dynamic analysis, and kind of confirm that if that injected code is indeed malicious in nature. Okay, got it.
Got it, Pragyan.
Okay.
And where do we run this command, Pragyan? So you shared one command called dxdaeg. Is it in command prompt?
Yeah, no, it just you click on start button, okay, and just search for dxdiag. Okay, so it will actually like kind of show you one executable with the name dxdiag, and just click place enter, and it will like start and showing you the Windows 7 and other stuff in that dxdiag. Yeah.
1 second, Pragyan. I'm just running it on my machine.
Okay. So for the Windows 10, you know that it's Windows 10, it is x64. In the profile page of Windows Volatility, you see like these are the only profiles supported by the operating system, by the Volatility. So you just kind of
Yeah, yeah.
start this one or this one or this one, okay? And in whichever you kind of get the readable characters, you know that, yeah, this is something which is something which will like do my work for this case, okay? And if you are not getting any readable character from any of them, then we like it's like a dead end. We can't kind of proceed memory forensics using Volatility framework. Got it?
Got it, Pragyan. So instead of service pack, we can just uh, go with this one. Like, uh, what to say? Whatever we are seeing in the previous page,
Mhm.
instead of
Yes.
naming it as Windows 10 SP164 and all,
Yeah.
we can check with these three profiles.
Correct.
Windows 10 64 underscore 10586
Yes.
or 14393 or 15063.
Yes.
So
Only till here. Yes. Yes. You can just
yeah,
replace that, and it will be like able to pass that.
okay. So you got this information by volatility uh,
Yeah.
volatility
Yeah.
profiles, is it?
Yes, I'll just quickly save that. Okay. So this is the official actually page, GitHub page of Volatility. They have actually also open sourced the code. Okay. So from
Mm-hmm.
there, you can just visit and get all the profiles that they are supporting. Suppose for Windows 7, you can see that they're only SP1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's always only SP1. There's nothing SP2 like SP2. Okay. It's just like the numbers are changing 23418 or maybe, and you can also like just write even like till here, and most of the time it will do your work. You don't have to kind of write the full number. Okay. And it will be like able to parse it. So Windows 7, it is very easy. The only difficulty which I have seen like from past 3 years is parsing the Windows 10. So when I started testing the Volatility, the Windows 10 format was not supported, but kind of slowly they actually catch up and kind of I started supporting those things. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah, Pragyan.
yeah, any questions, Simon?
No, Pragyan.
Okay. So now, actually, for this class, I want to discuss something new now, which is the last part of like this thing, and it is not that linked to the kind of what do you say the malware, but it's something like how you investigate in real life scenario. Okay. So what will happen is like in real life scenario, this thing maybe I will not be able to share as of now. Okay, this is some copyright issue, but I'll just kind of like tell you how this happened. So what happened like normally what happened like in a scenario, what we see right now as an investigator, we see that all this time there is something called as lateral movement. So are you aware of lateral movement terminology? Any idea what that is?
Yeah, Pragyan.
Yeah. So what happened is
Yeah.
that, like suppose someone compromised your system, and from there they will like try to see if you are able to connect to any other system, and the malware will jump to that system, and slowly they will actually reach the even the domain controller, and will compromise the full computers of every system in that network or in that company or organization. And then once they do that, they will start either exfiltrating the data out, or maybe kind of they will like execute a ransomware and compromise the system. Like suppose for a scenario, suppose you are in the SOC department, and the malware attacker is suppose is interested in kind of seeing like exfiltrating the data out from R&D department, the research and development department. So, but they are not able to kind of hack any system over there. What they will do is like they will compromise maybe your system, and from there they will like check if somehow like they are able to reach to the DC domain controller, and from there if they can jump to like get some admin privilege account, and then kind of anyhow reach to the R&D department, and then they will start detect spill or maybe compromise the system or execute a ransomware. So this is what happening in now in every day to day by the malicious attacker. And what happened like when this happened, we actually have to perform the forensic investigation. So what happened like maybe suppose this was one of the system that suppose got compromised. Maybe I'll uh, just let me do that. Suppose this was one of the computer one that got compromised. Okay. And then what happened? Computer two got compromised. And then suppose from here, computer three got compromised. And from here, computer four got compromised. So this is something like this. Okay. So what happened, like when you were investigating, you were only able to see this. You came to know only about this computer two. Okay. But you were not knowing about computer one. Okay. So in that case, you will be able to get the malware and you can do all this stuff like static and dynamic analysis. But the thing is now I have to know very two important things. What are the systems from C2 where the malware went to, like from here C3 and C4, you have to know this. What were the system where the malware attacker laterally traversed to, and how it came to C2 first. You have to investigate. You have to see like how it came. So here, like it came from C1. So you have to perform the forensic investigation of this system and tell from where this thing came, what was the source, okay, and what were the targets from C2. Got it? So this is something that is like happening every time in any kind of scenario, okay? And for that, actually, you need to kind of perform the forensic investigation of the machine, okay? And this is some of the stuff that like actually I'll be like, I want to discuss today how things happen, okay? So what happened is like, suppose the system, suppose this C2 got compromised. So am I clear till this point, Sam? Any questions till now?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
I'm clear until this point.
So suppose for now, for example, you are in the C2, okay? And just want to reiterate that this is something you will be like facing day to day in your like activity when you are like kind of protecting the organization from any malicious attacker. So this is a real life scenario which you will be kind of, you will be like facing, okay? So suppose you are in the C2 and you have to kind of perform the forensic investigation. So the first thing will be to kind of, what you will be doing is kind of some of the tips that I want to share is some of the things is that you will check that if this system is of high priority, like if it is a production based system or a normal system, and based on that, like if it is normal system, you quickly quarantine that system so that is not, so that any the malware which is existing right now in this one is not able to communicate to any other system like C3, C4, or any other system like maybe C5. Okay, so you quarantine the system. And if it is a kind of a production based system, what you have to do is you have to quickly connect to the owner, okay, and you have to tell that there's a major incident and you have to kind of quarantine the system. You inform them, and if they tell that the quarantining is not possible, then the steps that you will be taking is you will ask him what are the major ports or major ports where from where the connection comes to this machine. So suppose this is a web server, so you know that most of the connection will come from ATN 443, but the connection will not go out from this system to 80 or 443 to other systems. Okay, so what you will do is to quarantine the system. You'll quickly tell, you will quickly put a block in firewall that terminate any communication that is going out from the C2 to any other destination over port 80 and 443. Okay, so these are some of the, rather than quarantining, you block those ports from the firewall. Okay, so this is something that you can do. Okay, so this is how that's the first step. And now you start performing the forensics of that. So in the forensics, once you have quarantined the system, that is the first thing. Post identifying that it has been compromised, the first thing is to contain the incident, post identification. And once you do that, you remediate, like for you, like see where the attacker went, how it came. So now to know where actually they went to any other system. So what you will do is like, there are some of the things like, kind of, just let me see that. Okay, so the first thing is like to know from where it came. Okay, like from C1, so you have to see the this event, which is 4624 event. Okay, so in the event log, what happened, like there is a file which is existing in C drive, Windows, System 32, Win EVT folder, and there will be a folder called as logs. Inside that, you will be getting a security.evtx file. Okay, and in the security.evtx file, you will be, when you parse that, you'll be seeing an ID known as 4624. Okay, so this will actually tell you that lot of other things like what were the connections, who all logged into this system. This is the first thing that this thing will tell you. Okay, who all logged in and how they logged in. Okay, so the first thing is to see like who all logged in. So for that you need to know what are the accounts present on the system. So so there need to be an account, so where the attacker actually logged in. Okay, so what happened, like suppose there are like multiple accounts, so what you see is like what you do is like get all the account names which are existing on that system. Okay, and you can do that from three ways. Okay, first thing is like from the 4624 event you can know what are the accounts where some login happened, so from that you got the list. The other thing is like maybe the account was created prior but it got deleted somehow by the attacker post their work was completed. So what you can also get those names from the 4720 event ID, what where accounts were created. Okay. And the other thing, the suspicious thing which will be raising is the 4726 event ID, which will tell you like if there were any account that were deleted during the time frame of like infection or maybe prior. Okay. Like suppose you get an account, maybe ABCD and with the name ABCD, and then you will like connect with the owner and tell them, ask them like if they're aware of this account. If they are not, then you will be prioritizing this account and see all the activity that happened from this account, whatever it came, whatever got highlighted from 4726. Okay, so using these three things you will be like able to kind of get what are the accounts that were like kind of created by the attacker, or maybe on which account the someone logged in. Okay, and uh, yes, Adip, you're there.
It's pretty much clear.
Okay.
So whatever the accounts that are deleted, so yeah, obviously we will, our first focus will be on those accounts,
Yeah.
whatever the mess that it would have created.
Hmm.
So we will look into it. Yeah, it is pretty much clear. But yeah,
So have you worked prior on this security EVTX file?
not exactly. But
Okay, so yeah, I will suggest like you like start like kind of better understanding that event file, because that is something like it will be like the most important thing when you are kind of handling any cyber incident. Okay, it's
okay.
okay. So the
So
first, yeah, please.
what was it again? Like, I mean, like, do I need to refer any website or something?
Um, just one thing I will do is I have given you the path from where you can get all the logs, and inside that you will get multiple logs. Every log is useful. The most important is normally analysts start is like with the security.evtx file, parsing that. So there will be multiple logs, but today why I'm actually sharing this is because for a forensic investigation, what happened is like most of the time what happened for investigating a single machine, there are multiple things, okay, to kind of investigate. And this is just the, I will say, 50% of the activity that has been recorded in this mind map. Okay, so what
Okay.
I'm actually doing part time right now is kind of I want to like learn new things, so I don't want to spend time kind of investigating any forensic device. So what I'm doing is, if you see there is something written as automated, right? So all the,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, all the notes which are written automated. Yeah, what I have done is I'm writing a program which will kind of
Mm-hmm.
do all this activity, get all the informations for my thing. Okay.
Okay.
I don't have to spend time. The forensic investigation will be like completed in minutes rather than giving hours. And also, you can see there are a lot of things that one analyst needs to kind of check, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just not that. Even like when you are seeing the 4624, you see there is some connection, like connector 1A 4647. So you need to kind of check those information 4624 and rematch, match that with some other ID like 4647, uh, which you see somewhere, maybe yeah, yeah, 4648, another thing. I need to kind of match. Maybe like this thing will give you which account the attacker logged in, but you want to know that what IP address of that system was, how till how much time the attacker was in that system. So if you see there's a connector 1A, so you have to see the 4647. Okay, and what's the use of 4647? It will give you the account log of time. Suppose I logged into a system and I logged out after 1 hour, so login time will be recorded here and log of time will be
Mm-hmm.
recorded in other event. So I have to make connections to that. Okay. So my plan is actually to kind of automate the whole stuff and get the things. And so this is something that I'm working at actually right now. And So these are four things that happens in a forensic investigation. So let's start. So account is something first thing to start, like what are the accounts in that system, or who logged in anything, created anything, deleted any other account. So what happened? One of the incident that I was kind of handling, what happened? There was an admin login, and after that, the administrator hacker logged into the admin account, post brute forcing. They what they do is they created another account with the name something funny or something kind of like which like Microsoft was the name of the account, and it will like for a normal analyst they will be confused that maybe it's just a normal default account, but it was like kind of malicious account. But I was able to
Okay.
see that with the and they also deleted that when the time I reached and I started investigating that account was actually deleted. But I was able to get
Mm-hmm.
that the 4726 thing. Okay. And then I started the investigation. So this is something that you have to start first, get the accounts, and then you see who all logged into the system. So the 4624 is something which will tell you who all logged into the system. So successful login, there are some, I will just tell you something. Let's check this out. So what's the use? So uh, just let me check that. There are multiple process. So there is something called as logon type. Okay, so logon type will tell you like how the attacker or how the anyone logged into the system. So suppose you in the event entry you see something like logon type 10. So it will tell that there was a RDP based connection, remote desktop protocol based connection to that system. If you see like suppose logon type 2, that means the attacker or the employee actually typed from the keyboard. So just one example, you are handling an incident where you see that you have to investigate a system and you see that a logon happened to that system, but the logon type is true, right? Which is keyboard based
Mm-hmm.
logon. And you, when you
Okay.
ask the, when you connected with the owner, they told that they were on paid time off on that day for a week. So now you know that, okay, the attacker, the main employee was not there. He was out of town. And then what you do, you actually kind of work with the security team, get the CCTV footage, and then see that based on this event, just with this event, you can go proceed and see the CCTV footage and see like if there was any other kind of person who actually logged into a system. So I will actually like to share one incident where I worked, and this was like the major helpful thing. So what happened? There was a girl who actually was working for a client, and what happened from her system? Actually, what
Mm-hmm.
happened? Her system was left in the like she was using the desktop on the office environment, and one of
Okay.
the core production database got deleted by her. Okay, so we
Okay.
actually checked what was the device, what was the where is the laptop, desktop situated, and all the stuff. And she was telling that she's on PTO. We told her like to show us some proof, like a ticket or something, but she was not having proof. Maybe she went by some other mode. So what happened? Like we were also seeing that, okay, and then we saw like was there a network based login to her system? Maybe she is not knowing who logged in, or someone attacker logged into her system. So we saw that there was no network based login. So we were confirmed that, okay, there was no hacking activity which required any network based access to that system, but we saw only logon type 2. Okay, and now logon type
Okay.
2 actually raised suspicion that the suspect, our employee, was actually kind of the real culprit. She was like telling us false story that maybe she was on PT or something. But for the sake of completeness, now based on this information, just with this information, we went to the CCTV footage, and actually we saw another girl sitting on the desktop at the particular
Mm-hmm.
time when this event was recorded. So this event also recorded time, okay, time and date.
Okay.
So we saw the time
Okay.
and date. We're knowing the time and date. We're knowing that someone brought a keyboard. We went to the CCTV footage. We directly went to that portion of time when someone logged in, and we saw another girl sitting over there. Okay, and interesting what
Okay.
happened when we saw that girl photo to that the real suspect, well, the earlier suspect. She told that she is a roommate. Okay,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
we were knowing that kind of like what happened was like that the employee was writing her password, or maybe she was the her roommate actually saw her writing the password.
Yeah. Some sort of eavesdropping.
Yeah, and she was having some
Yeah.
grudge against her due to some promotion issue,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
and she kind of. So this is something like uh, this event types are something like the most important stuff. Okay, got it?
I mean, where do we see this event types like 3, 10, 11 and all that? Again,
Okay.
I mean, if possible, uh, can we go to that location which you shared with me,
Okay.
Windows System 32 with event logs? If we can find that information, I mean that will be like live.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see that now. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah,
Yeah. So this is one of the event log actually, which I have actually parsed previously. And you can see over here the event ID of that. So security event log will have different event IDs. So one of the things which I see that event ID is 4624. Okay. And
mm-hmm.
the logon type, if you see, the logon type is 2, right? So that means it is a
So it's
keyboard-based,
keyboard.
right? And now I want to see what was the account which was logged in. So I can see the target user name is T Dungan. So this is the account on which someone logged in. Okay, got it? And this is the computer name. Base RD01 is the name of the computer. Okay, got it? So this is a basic thing like how actually the event log looks like. Okay, got it? And any question?
And Pragyan, how did you how are you able to pass this
Okay, so
log spread?
parsing that, there is one call as okay. So there's a parser in GitHub. Okay, it's called I think EVTX parser. Okay, um, yeah, this one. Okay, so this is a Python-based EVTX. So what you do is like you can just install that Python EVTX and then just give it as an input. So there are some like you need to like kind of know there are some keyword like you have to install this EVTX and then you just need to call a function inside this module and give the file name where the security EVTX and it will like parse that either in XML format or JSON format. So I parse that in JSON format and I'm just kind of beautifying that in a prop. So this was something that I got from that thing. That's for like explaining you in a more easy way. I actually beautify that using this website, JSON Beautifier. And this is how the information you'll be getting from that security VTX. Okay.
No, 1 second, Pragyan. Let me make a note of all these things.
Yeah.
Uh, it's absolutely fine. I mean, it's getting recorded, right? So
Yeah, it's
I
getting.
can
Yes.
I can somehow get it. Yeah, fine.
So let's go. I hope I'm audible, right?